me, Sony. Welcome back to another VR video. This is actually a video I just recorded. It turned out 30 minutes and it was a bit too opinionated, so I decided to re-record it. That is really frustrating because I've just wasted half an hour. This video is going to be a little bit unusual because it's not really showing any new content. This is actually going to be a discussion video about controllers. As you can see, the controllers over there. Right. The only, well, you're probably wondering, where am I then? In this case, it is actually a new place that you've not seen. This is actually a real place. This is the common room from my college, my actual college, the college that I went to. I rebuilt it. Well, I built it in 3D as a memory back when I left college. This was about 10 or 11 years ago. The place had already changed by the time I got my results. These tables had changed to different tables. So this place has probably changed so much since I was last here. And that was about 10 years ago. There was a door here. Well, there is a door here. There's a fire exit sign up there. Over here we have another door to the kitchen area, which is behind this wall. Then there were two vending machines here. There was a door to the outside and the main building was over there. The skybox over here, same skybox that I use all the time. It's one that I made for my Tubby Super Cat game, and it's the one that I was using in most of my other VR games as well. This video is about discussing the differences between the current VR controllers that we've got. So we have here the Vive controllers. What are you doing? Rolling about. Get back over here. That's the thing with these controllers. They keep rolling. Just stop. Yep. You know what? There. These controllers here, Vive controllers. These on the left, Oculus controllers. And of course we have over here the roly ones, the Sony PSVR, PS Move controllers. No, they are not PSVR controllers. That was incorrect. These are PS Move controllers. They were never designed for VR, and that's why we're starting with these today. There are no directional buttons on top. No directional buttons, no D-pad, no analog stick, no touchpad, no nothing. There is no directional movement on these things, and yet a lot of games get built for PSVR, and a lot of people, the first thing they ever see is PSVR. That's the first VR, professional VR that they get to see. These things need changing. These things are not good enough for VR as it is now. They only have these buttons. There's no directional control. The triggers on the left hand side and right hand side are not triggers. They are the start and select buttons, which you can probably read right now. My lenses are steaming up. They're not usable. They're not really functional. Holding them down switches to pairing mode for these controllers. So again, they're not really usable triggers. They're very, very hard to press. I ended up pressing them with sort of two hands when I was using these controllers for DIY tracking, VR tracking. They're terrible. Anyways, I veer towards the Oculus because I just prefer the controllers. I prefer the way they do things. These things to me are just too big. That's the first difference. These things are much bigger, but there are some more important differences. Now, everyone thinks the most important differences here is that analog and the touchpad. That's not the big difference. There is a much difference actually between the analog and the touchpad. The touchpad takes a bit more space, but it gives you a bit more control in terms of where you start pushing it. The analogs are always reset back to the center when you, of course, start moving. You can use both. For analog movement, you can use both. They are inherently analog. The analog sticks are, of course, physically analog, while the touchpad, it's not a difficult thing to use. It's brilliant to be used. It feels great in hand. Again, I'm going from other people's opinions based on in terms of the feel, because I don't have a controller like that. I have Oculus controllers, as you can see in my hand, when I'm not holding anything. The difference between these is actually a physical difference. The shape of them is what makes them very, very different. Now, the Oculus controller has these grip triggers. They are used to determine your fingers. So we're going to put this down. That set of fingers. So you've got 4 fingers, obviously. If you can count this on the left hand side, we have the index finger. That is controlled by the trigger on all controllers. So you've got a trigger here on this controller here. You've got a trigger down there on the Vive. And you've also got a trigger on these the PS Move controllers, wherever they've got to. But this grip trigger is a bit different. That's the one that controls your fingers here on an Oculus Rift. On a Vive, it's not the same thing. That grip trigger is just a button. You see, on this controller, those triggers control your fingers. When you start up Oculus Home, these are on the table. You'll see them in VR. As soon as you pick them up, you see your hands. That's the difference. When you pick these up in Steam VR, you're not going to see hands. You never see hands. You just see the controllers. That's because these track the controllers, these track your hands. How is there any difference? This. You see this? That is the tilt. That is the tilt coming from your actual fingers. When you do that with your fingers, these controllers will tilt. That's because they are shaped like sticks. That's how you do things in real life. When you swing a sword, you lift it up back like this, you put your fingers in and you swing. It makes swinging swords really easy because you're holding the actual shaft of the sword, the handle. These are not designed to do that. When you do this, you can see how awkward that looks, right? You can see how the whole thing just tilts. That means that these stay in your palm. These stay exactly where your hand is, or they're supposed to. These are not supposed to be like that. How is that functionally different? The functional difference is that when I hold these and I do that with my fingers, I just release the trigger and the actual controllers stay in the same place with the same orientation. So I can do this. I can keep my hand in one place while pulling my fingers out and in. This cannot be doing that. This is impossible to do on a Vive. This video would be physically impossible to record on a Vive because this does a very different thing. These triggers are not controlled for your fingers. They're not finger controllers. They're not finger trackers. These are. The other difference is, of course, the Vive trackpad and the analog stick. What is the actual difference there? Well, it's mostly the buttons. The analog feel, they're gonna both work brilliantly for movement and for, you know, tracking, determination of anything like that, directional stuff. Buttons, there are two of them on the Oculus controller. Let's swap them around. So we've got two buttons here on the left-hand side, well, on the left-hand controller, two buttons here and a menu button. On the right-hand controller, which is this one, you've got two buttons on the other side, two buttons on the side, and then you've got a home button, which of course is non-functional for any gamer, for any developer, just like this home button here. How does the trackpad not create buttons in VR the same way buttons do? You see, with the buttons on an Oculus controller, you can press the button and you don't affect the analog stick. With the touchpad, you touch the trackpad first, which means if you're using it for movement, you're going to instantly start moving as soon as you try and press a button, let's say for switching on a torchlight in Halo for something like that. You know, you don't want to put your hand somewhere to press a torch. You're in a gunfight, you want to switch on your torchlight very quickly. And so you use a button. There's only one actual button on a Vive. Actually, there's two, but no. There's only one functional button on a Vive. That one button on a Vive is really unusual, and I think this is a really bad design choice that they've made. I feel like they've just gone with whatever they've thought of in the first place when they started designing this controller. The home button down here is non-functional. It's not something usable in a game. It's not something that a developer can use. Why is the home button so easily accessible when it's something that takes you out of a game? It removes you from the experience that you're in, while the menu button, the one that we can actually use, is less accessible. It's harder to get to. It's a stretch. It's a reach. That's the one that's functional. Why don't they just swap them around? Seriously, it's not even a hardware decision. It's a software choice. Just swap them around. It's so easy. You might have to reprint the buttons then. That's the other thing. But yeah, that's the main difference that I wanted to talk about. Not the buttons, but the actual tilt. This is a huge difference on these controllers, and this is why I don't like how everyone's going with only the Vive design. We need more designs like this. More designs which are designed to stay in hand and not tilt like that. Why? It might seem like a functional benefit to have these tilting all the time, but to be able to know where the hand is a very different thing. It's a difference to the experience. It's a functional difference. It makes it easier for us to give you a more visual experience in terms of the hands, and you can use the triggers for that kind of stuff. The Valve Knuckles controllers are going to solve that. You know, you don't even have to hold them, and then you have these fingers. That's really useful, but I believe I want something more tactile. I don't like the idea of non-existent sensor technology for your finger tracking, because you're gonna be holding things, and closing your hand, just clenching it into a sweaty fist, is not gonna It's not going to replace this feeling of a Vive controller or this feeling of an Oculus controller. My opinions on these idea that everything can be solved with these wireless headsets and these 4K headsets, I just don't understand it, because, you know, I'm running this on an Oculus Rift. It's not the highest resolution place, you know, it's not the highest resolution headset available right now. I'm running it on a GTX 1080, and this small, tiny little scene, the moment I switch on screen space reflections, this does not run at 90 Hz. I've lost frame rate. That's on a very, very expensive £500 graphics card. You know, one of the near top end graphics cards right now. You know, 4K, 5K, it's not going to benefit you right now. Wireless is going to be brilliant if you don't get that lag. Also, there was something on the VR Inside stream which I was watching on Saturdays. It comes on Saturdays on Nate's channel. You should watch it. Which was that one of the guys was mentioning VR, wireless VR it means that you've got loads of wireless technology going on right next to your brain. It's not exactly a very healthy decision to make. Let's throw these things about. Woo! Because that is quite realistically the end of this video. Goodbye!